2022. So that's a story we'll follow, and we'll pay attention to that because that's big. That's a landscape changer potentially because he was rock solid and certainly a favorite to win that Senate seat. So he's out, and we'll follow that story closely. However, I want to begin today. Yesterday, I took some swings at our President Joe Biden. Not hard to do. In fact, easy to do because he's made so many mistakes. It's been a cluster blank. It's been a terrible run, a year of calamity. But, it's funny. I did get a lot of different emails yesterday saying, well, all you do is complain and you never come up with answers and there's no answers for the things that you were talking about. So, in fairness, yesterday all I did was complain. In fairness, a lot of times what we do is complain. That's what we do. We get behind the microphone. I get behind the microphone. Folks get out there behind their phones and they complain. And I get it because there's frustration and a lot of it. So, because of that, people, they pick up their phones, they punch down the digits, and they're upset, and they want to, vent, and they have every right to do that. But on the flip side of that, you got to do more than just complain. There's got to be answers to problems that you've posed. There's got to be some kind of a solution. So I thought fair is fair. Yesterday I named a number of different problems, certain problems that Joe Biden has thrown the accelerant on and made us even, I guess, even put us in a worse position is probably the best way to say that. But some of the things that I mentioned yesterday, I'll give you my quick solutions to. I mean, we talked about crime, immigration, Afghanistan, inflation, energy, COVID, education, and racial divide. Those are just some of the things that we touched on yesterday. All right, I'll give you the quick once over on all of that. If I were king of the world, if I were in charge, what would I do? Well, crime nationwide is spiking. Why? Well, because, first of all, you have made the police officers, in a concerted effort by our liberal friends, the police officers have become the bad guys. Right? The men and women patrolling the streets every single day, somehow, some way, have become the enemy. And what has happened, what's interesting about this, and we talked about it at the time, all of us, most of us in radio or broadcasting on the conservative side said this when it was happening. You're going to rue the day when you toss the police aside. And over the summer with the riots and all that went along with that, and people were demonizing all of the police officers instead of demonizing the bad ones, and there are bad ones. They were demonizing, the 100%. Everybody who was wearing blue somehow was bad. And we talked about how this was going to have this ripple effect, trickle-down effect, and people were going to be emboldened to go out there and commit crimes, and that's what's happening. So you start with the cops, right? You start with the cops. You try to get the cops back into everybody's good graces. You make a real effort to embrace them. Not an effort because you see things burning. Right now, Biden and the rest of our friends on the left-hand side of the aisle, they see that cities are we're going up in flames and crime is spiking. So now all of a sudden they want to, re-embrace the cops. This is after the bills that have been passed to put them in a box and put them in a corner. So first, I would re-embrace the cops and tell them that, they are still the most important piece of this puzzle, without question. Now, obviously, some of the things that were pushed forward in some of the bills, the police accountability bill, is filled with some things that I thought were good ideas, but for the most part, some of the stuff that was in that was just a colossal waste. Now, I don't know if you can go back and break that, but it's something that you have to investigate and try to fix. So, but crime nationwide, so the cops are part one. Part two of this, well, there's three parts. Part two of this is to reestablish the facts or the idea that crime is you're going to be punished when you commit crimes, right? You're going to be punished. And if you commit violent crimes, you're going to jail. And if you commit a lot of nonviolent crimes, you're going to jail. And if you walk into a convenience store and you point the gun at the temple of the person behind the counter, you're going to jail, right? This is not okay. And it's not okay to go into, a CVS and steal $550 worth of stuff because 600 or more is you're a misdemeanor if it's 600 or less. That stuff is just garbage. So you've got to break that apart and reestablish some control. And that's not hard to do. You just start sending people to prison. And part of that, though, is you're going to have to get the liberal DAs to enforce the law. Now, how do you do it across, the broad spectrum? Well, you got to put people in office that actually believe in the rule of law, which is where all of you come in. You got to vote for the folks that are going to do that. You want to reestablish some sense of sanity in this country? Put people in office that are going to follow the rule of law, that are going to make sure that when people commit crimes, they go to jail. That means putting in DAs and folks of that nature across the entire country that are of the same mindset. Again, you can't have this chaos where it's okay to rob, rape, and pillage. It's because it's just not. And that, you got to stop. If you're in Connecticut, you got to start there and sort of let that flow out. Okay, we start here then. Because that's, you look at it at the surface, they've collapsed this system in a short period of time, and rebuilding it's not going to be easy. But if you did it here in Connecticut, where, I'm sorry, kids are getting away with murder. How does that happen? Because you let things get out of control. Immigration. This is such an easy fix. We've talked about this forever. We've got a flood of folks coming across the border. If I were living in an impoverished nation, I would try to come across the border too. I think that's pretty simple. That's not rocket science. You're living in Guatemala, you're living in Nicaragua, you're living in El Salvador. If you can get here somehow, some way, Mexico, you get here, you try to make a better life for yourself. Who wouldn't? Everybody would. However, what happens is, as you know, it falls on the backs of the citizens of the United States to pay the burdens of a lot of this stuff, right? Whether it's in particular healthcare. So, you've got to do an infinitely better job at the border, meaning you've got to put more bodies on that line, on that front line. Now, as a trade-off for that, make it more accessible. Like, I get, this is such an easy equation. Hire more people to expedite the process for folks who want to legally come in here. Do what's supposed to. You don't even need to create new laws. Just do what's on the books. And don't let people just walk across. And don't just catch and release. There's got to be some kind of a concerted effort that you tell people who are coming, if you're doing it illegally, against the laws of the United States of America, you'll be punished. Where did we lose this will to punish those who break our rules? We just sort of say, all right, they just wanted a better life. I get it. Do it right. We'll welcome you with open arms, man. I'll give you a standing ovation when you're sworn in as a United States citizen. It's never about immigration itself. It's always about law and whether or not you're breaking it. So that, to me, is an infinite, easy solution. But the problem is both sides, Republicans and Democrats, they see advantages in opening the floodgates. And if you're trying to tell me that COVID didn't explode in this country because of the immigration issue, you're crazy. COVID exploded because of the immigration issue. That was part of it. On a national scene, quickly, as I see what time it is, I started talking about some of the stuff that I'm passionate about, and next thing I know, it's almost time to go. So Afghanistan, I touched on this a little bit yesterday. The way we exited Afghanistan's an embarrassment. If you don't see it, then you don't want to see it. Putting people in harm's way, killing, a family and 13 people in a drone strike. That got no news coverage. None. This president made that order came through his office. That drone strike killed a family. He's not held responsible for that. If that happened under Trump's watch, oh my God, think about that. But the idea that we picked up and ran from a strategic location that we built and we facilitated and we've manned with like less than 2,000 soldiers for the last 10 years is absurd. It's absurd. So rather than going into that in detail, we've talked about that a million times. You can't undo what we've done, but when you look back at this presidency, when you look back at Afghanistan, you're going to see, and you have to see, this is one of the colossal fails, maybe of any presidency, what we have done there, and what will the end ramifications be of that. That remains to be seen. Same goes for inflation. Like with the inflation situation, they've unleashed this, right? So there is. How do you put the genie back in the bottle when you've already sent the American people so much money? Right? It's all out there, right? We've given away all of this money to supposedly help with COVID relief. And, I think probably 10 years from now, we'll find out, how much of that money was stolen. But you've got to reestablish some sense of financial sanity. We're $30 trillion in debt. When I started this job like 15 years ago, I think if I go back and listen to tapes, maybe we were $6 or $7 trillion in debt, right? Because it was, let's say 15 years ago. The beginning of Obama. Maybe 8 or 9. I have to go back and look how much it was. I can't remember. But I can remember talking about the national debt clock and thinking about, wow, that's a lot of money. And since then, we've more than tripled. And there's no end in sight. In fact, they want to spend more. Listen, if you're alive today, you're a baby. You're not paying that off in your lifetime. It'll probably never be paid off. But that's a strange sort of way to look at that, isn't it? It's like saying to yourself, I'll never pay my credit card bill off. I'll die and that'll be it. But this is a country that has a huge debt to service. And the more fake money they throw out there, the more the cost of bread is. The price of a cost of bread goes through the roof, and next thing you know, the money that you have in your pocket's worth nothing. All right, I see what time it is. I got to get going. So those are just a couple of things. Just quickly, energy independence. Biden blew that. You know that. We could reestablish that quickly. We could, open up pipelines. But by the way, I'm all about the environment. Somebody please tell me how it's smarter to have, trucks and oil tankers traveling over highways and byways with the pollution that has. It's so stupid. With the pollution that emanates from that, and to get that to the destinations, how that's smarter than rolling oil through a pipeline.